So today I'm fixing my Osmo mobile camera gimbal, which I've been using for recording. Unfortunately, on this tripod stand where the gimbal was standing, I accidentally knocked it over and fell on the ground because 3 feet not very stable. Something like 5 would be better. And I think what happened, this is the Osmo mobile dismantled. This power switch must have hit the ground and basically it just flopped up and down like that. Didn't activate anything, wasn't sprung loaded, and of course as a result wouldn't turn on. So I've dismantled it, as you can see here. I'll go through how you dismantle it by showing how I put it back together again. The reason I'm doing it this way around is I wanted to make sure that I could fix it before bothering to video everything. The offending part is this switch on the circuit board, which you can see that piece of metal that I've levered up there. That is the power switch. It's a simple two-way single pole switch, and the part that's broken is around here somewhere. Yep, this bit here, very, very small. So here's my finger by comparison. That's a piece of plastic on the end. Difficult to see. I wonder if I can zoom in. Yeah, so that right hand square piece of plastic had broken off. Let's see if I can point. Had broken off right down that line there. At the moment I've got some super glue on it and I'm trying to glue the two pieces back together again. Hopefully it hasn't glued too much to the paper. Nope, it's quite shiny paper that it's on. So far that's successful. I don't know how strong that's going to be. Not a very good design. Because it's a very small piece of plastic and quite weak as a result. That piece of sticking out plastic, I believe, fits in the slot on the other side of the switch. You can just about see there, there's a little recess, a little gap on the inside of the switch. That's where it sits. And of course this plastic sits inside the switch body, which is there. And it's sprung loaded because here is a little spring. And now we've got to try and fit it all back together again, which could be interesting. Now the way I dismantled this switch was to prise up, let me see if you can see those, yeah, there's some tiny, right at the end of my thumb there, some tiny little tabs that were folded down onto the plastic body of the switch next to the printed circuit board. There's 4 of them actually, either side of this metal. So I just prised the outer 2 up slightly and put my soldering iron on this end tab because that was sitting flush on the circuit board. I'm not going to bend it too much until I'm ready to reassembling it. But that tab on the end there was soldered to the circuit board, so obviously I desoldered it. And then what happened, of course, the whole thing flung apart because it was spring loaded, spring shot not too far fortunately, and managed to find both the plastic and the spring. So if I can get it back together again, that should fix it. Then I'll show you how you reassemble it, which of course will be the clue to how you disassemble it, how you take it apart. Now you might have other problems with it, you might have other reasons for taking it apart to fix some other bits. There were some other broken bits on this from, I guess, from the same fall. There's 2 bits of plastic on the end here for the screw hole that I super glued back together again, and somewhere, yep, this piece of plastic for a screw is also broken off. See on the end where I've joined it again, bit of super glue. Marked as model number OM150 on the bottom, and the top part is marked as model number ZM01. It's quite interesting what's in the rest of it because that's the main circuit board there. It's all marked in English type words on there. So A ground standing for analog ground and so on. Control. So even though it's made in China, I always thought DJI was a Chinese company. Looks like it's either being designed in America or England, somewhere like that. It's obviously English speaking. I'll have to look that up on the internet. A couple of circuit boards. So here's one of the chips on the top, made by ST Microelectronics. If you zoom in there, you can probably read off the chip numbers, find out why that is on the internet. And there's the other main one. Hard to read while I'm doing this, but probably again if you zoom in, should be able to get the numbers off that if you're interested in such things. That's the battery, 11 watt hour battery. This is quite an old model, of course, this one. This is the, I think the very original camera gimbal that they bought out. So I tried re-gluing those broken switch bits that came out of there, but in the end it was bordering on virtually impossible to do it. With normal tools, and the plastic was too brittle. Glued for a bit and then broke again. So what I'm going to do is just solder on a couple of wires onto these right hand two terminals, the middle one and the top one. Poke it out the side of the case so you can prise out the switch, poke a couple of wires out, and then at least I can turn the thing on just by touching the two wires next to each other. You won't get electric shock or anything because it's all low voltage. Not an elegant solution, but at least it's a quick way of allowing me to use my Osmo. So that's my two wires soldered onto it. Not the prettiest of connections, but it's made fair enough. And then to turn it on, just need to, hopefully we'll just need to touch these wires together and hold it for a second or something, and then it'll turn on, and then you can release them, so you don't need to be connected all of the time. So this button and joystick printed circuit board goes back onto the plastic like that. The ribbon cable, I think, probably can go through either slot, but I think that was the way that it came. It's going to be positioned in this sort of angle here. Obviously those wires have got to poke through, and I think before we get it in its final position, we'll plug in the ribbon cable, which is here, and these, or rather this ribbon cable, goes into this socket over here, and it's either released or locked into place by a little bit of black plastic which is at the back end of it, and when it's raised it releases the cable, and when it's pushed flat it locks it in place. So you have to get a little screwdriver. You can maybe just about see it there, that bit of plastic there, and either flip it up or press it down to lock it. So in this case we're going to try and reassemble it, so we need to get that back in its socket. Make sure it goes in a millimetre or two, hold it in that position, give it a push in, and then probably at the same time we can push the plastic flap down with the thumb, and that's it in place. So a little bit fiddly this, of course. Try and get the plastic in position like so. And then we've got a screw there to reassemble. A couple of screws on the printed circuit board. And yep, two screws on the top here as well. Also there's this plastic cage that goes around the joystick as well. That needs putting back into position. Just a screw there and a screw there, because you can see where the cover goes, where there's two screw holes. They line up with these screw holes here. Got one more to do here. So that's the first circuit board screwed in. What we can do is just test whether our power switch fix works by plugging in the battery and see if the lights come on by holding them together, and indeed they do. And let's just check whether we can turn off by doing the same. Hold them together again for a bit longer and release, and it goes off. So obviously that trick works. So now we can proceed with the next stage, which is putting this cover part on. This ribbon cable pokes through and has to slot into this connector, this socket. So again, you've got this black piece of plastic on the back there, which when it's flat locks the ribbon cable in, when it's up releases it. So we'll screw on this piece of black plastic first and then mount this one. It's probably a good idea to take pictures of the screws that you take off, or take pictures of the unit before you take the screws out as you're disassembling, because even though I tried to put the screws in a line as I disassembled them, sometimes it's hard remembering which screw goes in where. So I would recommend that. And one thing, when you're reassembling, make sure this white piece of plastic lays in its best position or good position. Basically, there's raised pieces of the black plastic that come up into the holes of the white plastic, and then it should sit reasonably flat. And this power socket should sit flush with the body like so. So then this basically should fit nicely, which it does. And we have to try and get the ribbon cable in now. All these things are a little bit fiddly. So you can see it's got a little white line on the ribbon cable. When it's flush with the socket, you know it's in place. Push the locking piece of plastic down. That's now locked and connected. That goes on there. This is the stage we're at the moment. So we've got the 4 screws back in here. We've got 2 here. And then this plate is basically just glued on. You see it's like double-sided tape. Obviously you just prise it off to dismantle it. But I think everything is now in place to put this back on. So just press that home like so. Keep that circuit board down. Then this cap piece goes on like so, and that is held in place by these 4 screws with a little hex head. Quite tricky to get in place, so I'm just going to use my tweezers like so. Now, some of the screws on the outside you'll find are little star screws, so I did start off dismantling the back end of this, which is actually unnecessary. That cap just prizes off, and there's these little star screws at various places, which is like a hex star. Actually, the same size screwdriver I can use as the hex bit to screw these screws on. Useful to have a set of different screwdrivers, of course, doing these sort of jobs. So we'll just put these 4 in and then show the next stage. And actually that star screwdriver bit is actually a T6 size. And that's those 4 screws in, and then the top end is basically held in place by these 3 screws down here. So obviously we've got a plug that's got to be plugged back in again. A little bit delicate. To remove it, you just have to prise it out. Let's just check. And these holes should line up where the screws go. I'll show you all in a minute. There we go. And then we need to reinsert these screws. There's 3 of them around the edge, and then this cover plate just screws on. So you need a tiny little Phillips type screwdriver. We're doing these. Do all 3 loosely first and then tighten them up after you've got them all in. All of them in place. If you jumble up your screws, these screws are just a little bit fatter than the other silver screws. You might need to jumble around or swap around some of your screws to make sure they're all back in the right places. And then that cover just screws on, and then we're back to how it was before, apart from we've just got to fit our joystick knob, and that's just a push on or pull off type arrangement like so. So what I'm going to do in a minute is put a push button onto this to make it a little bit more convenient. I've got some little miniature push buttons. If you haven't got any, you can buy them on eBay. Anything you do, you could probably even steal some buttons out of a remote control fob that maybe you've got lying around it's not working, and then you could just glue them into this reset on the side there with one of those common little push buttons. Trying to find some links to buy these on eBay. Solder onto the 2 wires, and we can just press the button. Still doesn't look brilliant, but it's a little bit easier to use. So just press and hold, unit comes on like so, and press and hold again to turn it off. And there's a bit of UV glue to hold that switch in place, nice and strong. It's not going to move at all. that's how to fix, or that's how I fixed my DJI OSMO camera gimbal. Good luck with yours. Thanks for watching. Bye.